It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Xiyue Liao. I always have to. She is a new faculty member in the statistics division, and we have a Department of Mathematics and Statistics. So we have a separate group of statisticians here. And so she comes to us from SDSU Long Beach, where she actually has advised a lot of students and thesis students. And as far as I know, she's actually designed a lot of data science courses. And so, and a lot of them have to do with project-based mentoring. And so I think she has a lot of experience with data science. So I think that's important. She got her PhD in statistics from Colorado State University. And so then she also did a postdoc at UC Santa Barbara. And as a postdoc, she also, I was interested when I was looking at your topics. She also got some industry health data from industry, and she actually got groups of students in mentoring to analyze this with machine learning models and predictive models. So I think having that connection is really good, and maybe here in San Diego we can think about reaching out to the healthcare industry. UC Santa Barbara has a big actuarial program, but here in San Diego we don't have such a big insurance presence. But insurance has expanded to healthcare and all sorts of things, so I think we might want to take advantage of that in San Diego. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Liao.
Everyone, welcome to my talk. I just want to add one more thing about the accelerator program in UCSB. So I still have some collaborators there, and actually they are interested in coming here to give a talk about what will the actual career look like maybe next semester.
Okay.
So then I will meet the department and the college. No. Okay, so today I will talk about some applications of shape and order constraint estimation methods. Yeah, so actually before I give this, I don't know that the audience will be mostly students. So if I know, I will choose some machine learning projects I have done.
Okay, well, you could mention them.
Yeah, I will mention them at the end of this one. Yeah, so first I want to give some general idea about what is shape or order constraint regression. And then I will give 3 applications. So I don't know if any of you have taken some course like regression analysis, right? Good. Yeah. So in modeling problems, we usually want to estimate an underlying trend, right, or curve, like a regression trend. So people like using parametric methods like a linear model, right? Because they are very easy to specify. But for many times, such kind of assumptions cannot be oriented. So here I will give a motivation example. So here, for example, if we want to estimate the average height given the tree diameter, if we look at this scatter plot, we may be tempted to fit a line to it, right? Right, because as tree diameter increase, on average, tree height will increase. So that's a very reasonable assumption. Right? So however, when we fit a line on it, we can see that when tree diameters are small, the line is pretty far from the observed value. Right? That means that linear fit is not good enough. So if we want to make some improvement, we may make a quadratic fit, which means we add an x squared in the model. So this looks better now, but we can see as tree diameter is at the value around 30, the curve is decreasing. Right? So this doesn't make sense because as tree diameter increase, tree height will not decrease. Right? The average height will not decrease. So how can we find a better model? So here, before I talk about like a shape constraint regression, I want to introduce the usual least square regression model a little bit. So here we assume that f is the underlying trend, like the increasing trend, and the epsilon will be the error. So usually people will fit a linear model like a beta 0 plus beta 1x or a quadratic model. So they are very easy to, so the value of beta are very easy to find. So it's just a quadratic programming problem. So if we want to make better or more reasonable fit, we can use shape constraint regression. So in such kind of regression, we only have very vague and qualitative assumption about the underlying trend. For example, we can assume the underlying trend is increasing, decreasing for convex, concave, or any combination of the two. So here on the right-hand side, I'm giving an example of an increasing concave fit with 4 knots. So here we are using slides, which I will introduce later. So you can see that this fit is much more reasonable than the first 2 fits. Right? So first, as tree diameter increase, the average tree height will increase fast. But when tree diameter is large, the increasing rate of height will become flat. Okay. Yeah. So if we keep adding knots, we will see that the increase in concave fit doesn't change much. So this is a good thing. It means that the shape constraint fit is pretty robust to knot numbers and placement. Yeah. So if we have taken some regression analysis course, we may discuss a topic about overfitting. Right? So if the model is too complicated, it may fit the current data set well, but it's very hard to be generalized to a new data set. So here, because of this robustness, we can see that the curve will not change much when we add more and more knots. Right? So this effectively avoids the overfitting problem. Yeah. Okay, so here is the how we do shape constraint regression. So such kind of regression is a cone projection problem. So instead of projecting the response linear space, we are projecting the response. So in the previous example, it's a tree height. But on the polyhedral convex cone, so here I call it C. And this is an example picture of what a cone will look like. So we can just imagine it as a pyramid with the point, the peak and the origin. Okay. So co-regression is to find an estimate, which is a projection of the y on the cone instead of a linear state. Yeah. So if you guys have any question, please let me know. Okay. Yeah, so if we assume the underlying trend is smooth, we can use spline basis functions to do the estimation. So here, for example, if we assume f is increasing or decreasing, we can use I-spline basis function. So here we can see that each I-spline basis function is piecewise quadratic, right, and increasing. So to make sure that the fit will be increasing within each interval, we just need to make sure that the coefficient of each spline basis function should be positive. Right? So here, for example, if we look at this interval, here only one first derivative is positive. Right? So if we want to make sure f is increasing here, we just need to let the coefficient for this spline basis function to be positive. Because within the interval, we have piecewise linear functions, which are positive. So as long as f is increasing at each knot, we can make sure that f is increasing within the interval. So that's so if we want convexity constraint, we have C spline basis function. So this is just the integral of I-spline-based function. So together with the constant function and the identity function, this will span the space of cubic spline. So cubic spline will allow us to enforce convexity constraint. Yeah, and here is how we form a cone. So the spline-based functions will be defined as delta 1 to delta k, and they will be the edges or generators of a cone. So if we look at this pyramid, the 4 arrows are the 4 edges defining the cone. Okay, so in order to make sure the monotonicity constraint is satisfied, we only need to have alpha to be non-negative. So W is a matrix with constant or identity vector, which we don't need to force the sign of the coefficient to be non-negative. Yeah, and the projection of Y, the projection of tree height will land on a random face in the cone. So this is another difference between cone regression or cone projection and the linear regression. So in linear regression, we will have a fixed design matrix, right? So no matter what the Y is, we use the same design matrix to do the projection. But here in cone regression, the projection will land on a random subset of the cone. So here we call it Fj. Yeah, and the random face will be determined by a sequence of phases, and the convergence will be guaranteed by the KKT condition. So I don't know if you guys have heard about KKT before. So if we are having a non-smooth fit, we have a different way to form the cone. So in the motivation example, we are having a smooth fit, right? So the curve will be smooth because the predictor diameter is continuous or numeric. But in real life, sometimes we will have discrete predictors. So for example, we want to predict people's average salary based on their highest degree earned. Right? Then the highest degree is discrete. A PhD, master, bachelor, and so on. They are not continuous. So in this case, if we want to have monotonicity constraint, we are no longer having spline basis functions to have a smooth curve. So this should be piecewise linear, right? I don't have yeah, so they should be piecewise linear. So like thank you.
There you go.
So for example, if someone has a bachelor's degree, their average salary is here. So maybe so given the inflation, maybe we want a higher starting salary. So if someone is having a master's degree, so maybe so in this case, we are having a increasing constraint, right? So we assume that as the degree is higher, the starting salary will be higher. But we are not having something like this, right? So they are constant and then jump upward and then be constant. Okay. Yeah. So later I will give an example about this kind of data set. So if we have such kind of data set, we will have a non-smooth fit. So here we need a constraint matrix to enforce the monotonicity or convexity. So here is an example. Suppose we have a total of n categories. So the A matrix will look like this. Right. So in this example, like n is equal to 3. Okay. And let the constraint to be mu1 smaller than mu2 smaller than mu3, right? This mu is average salary. Okay, so this A matrix will help us to force this inequality. So it's like this. So it's n minus 1 times n constraint matrix. So if this is A, then the constraint will be satisfied if A mu is greater than or equal to 0. Right? Because here the first row is comparing mu1 and mu2. Right? So if we let it to be larger than 0, so if this is larger than 0, then it means mu2 is larger than mu1. Right? So the second row is very similar. Yeah, so it's very easily defined, and the edges will be the so the edges will be the columns of this delta matrix, which are the generators of the code. Yeah, so if sometimes we are not sure what's the optimal shape or order, we can use some criterion to choose it. Yeah, so if you are in a regression class, you may have heard something like AIC or BIC. So those criterion can be used to choose best model. So the idea for defining a criterion is to balance overfitting problem and underfitting problem. So here we can see SDSU is the square prediction error. So if a model is fitting the current data very well, then SDSU will be small. But this may give us an overfitting problem. Okay. So here, for example, we have some points like this. Right? So if I connect every point, then this is a perfect fit. Right? So what I predicted is on the curve, and what's observed is also on the curve. So I don't make any mistake in the prediction. Well, here we are having an overfitting problem because what if now I observe something like this, so which is totally flat? So I cannot just extend it. So if I extend the curve, I will see a large gap, right? So it means that if SDSU is very small, it doesn't imply the model is very good. Right? So it may fit the current data too well, and it's very hard to generalize to a new data set. Okay. Yeah, so that's the idea of defining something like AIC, BIC. So here, because we are having a cone, it's called CIC. So the first part, log SDSU, is minimized if the model fit the current data well, but I want to penalize the complexity of the model. Right? So which is the second logarithm term. Okay. Okay, so that's all the theory. So any question? Yeah, so now let's look at some applications. So this cone projection framework can allow very flexible shape or order assumptions. So like in this project, we are trying to detect change point in some net set signal. So this project is a continuing project. I collaborated with FIA scientists. Okay. So they are trying to use some remote signal to detect forest disturbance. Okay. Okay. And here we have a total of 7 possible shapes. Right? So they are all reasonable in an ecological sense. So is there anyone from ecology background? No. Oh, okay. So here in the data set, X will be the time series, like the year 1, year 2, and the Y will be the net set signals. So if a forest is very healthy, then the signal will be like a flat or slowly decreasing. So if there is a sudden fire or mass logging, we will see a sudden upward jump. Right? So it will be the third shape, decreasing and then jump upward and then decreasing. Right? So if some forest is getting worse slowly and then become healthy again, it will be increasing and then decreasing. Yeah, so here we just want to use the shape regression method, right, to fit each data set and use CNC to choose the best shape. Okay. And the interesting shape here is the one jump and the double jump. So I remember when we started working on this project, the FIA scientists have already collaborated with some people from the computer science department. Yeah, but they didn't figure out any solution. But here our method works pretty well. So this method is included in our package, but later they translated the R package in Java and put it on Google Earth, and they are using it on Google Earth. So here, let's see how to use A matrix to force the shapes we want. So in a decreasing case, the constraint matrix is pretty straightforward. So here, we only need to force the first derivative at each knot of the spline basis function to be negative to make sure the curve is decreasing over the whole interval. Yeah, so if it's inverted V, which is decreasing and then increasing, right? If it's this shape, then first we assume that this value, this M, or inverted V is like this. So here we first assume that M is fixed, is known, right? And then we can use A matrix to force F to be increasing before M and then decreasing after M. Right? So if M is unknown, we just do a bisection search to find it. Yeah, so if we have a jump point, we need two more basis functions. So like I mentioned earlier, this framework is very flexible. So it does not only have increasing or convexity constraint. So it can have any kind of constraint we want. So here, if we want to add two basis functions, it will allow the curve to have an upward jump. So let me. So for example, if the curve is like this, and then it suddenly jump upwards, and then it will decrease again, right? So this is our A, the change point N. So in order to have this upward jump, we need two more basis functions to have this kind of shape. So the first function will be a jump function. So this will help us to move the curve upward at N. And another function is a ramp function. So it's like this. So if we were in a machine learning class, we know this is the ReLU activation function looks like this. The constant and then suddenly go upwards linearly. Okay. So this will allow us to have a different slope here. So when it jump upwards, it may decreasing at a different rate. Okay. Okay, so given these two small basis functions, we can define the A matrix. So here I will just skip the explanation. Yeah. So in this R package, we put in a example data set, which is part of this project. So the year vector is from 1985 to 2010. And for each time series, there will be 36 pixels in South Carolina. And in the package, we also have a graphic function to show which fit is the best fit. So here, like if we look at this plot, so first plot will be the feed. So like on the upper left corner, we have a one jump feed. Okay, so there is some disturbance happen around 1990, right? Yeah. And what follows is the CSA criterion plot. So we can see that the one jump shape has the smallest CSA. So that's why we choose it as the optimal shape. Okay. And here, if we look at this lower right corner, we see that for this set of signal, the best fit is a two jump fit, right? So some disturbance happens around 1996, and then the forest gets closing, right? And around 2002, there's some other disturbance that happen. Here, two jump has a smallest sense. Yeah, so the FIN scientists, they did some like cross validation to verify that this method works well. Right? The cross validation means that we not only want the method to work well with what we observed, we want it to work well with new data set. Yeah, so to do that, we just set aside one proportion, maybe 10% of the all the data we have as a test set. So we just pretend we don't observe them. And they use a 90% fit model, and they use the 10% to evaluate them. Yeah, so this method works pretty well with this FIA data set. Okay, so any questions? No. Yeah, so another project I have been working on is the self-modeling project with shape constraint. So this kind of framework will work with longitudinal data set. So do you guys ever like a no longitudinal data set? So what is longitudinal? No.
Time. So like if one person grows up, they take different samples from each like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, very good. Very good. You're not from stat division, right?
No.
Oh. Yeah, very good. So longitudinal data set means that for each individual, we will have more than one observation, right? So like so for example, if we want to study how COVID will affect people, we may follow 100 people for several years. So each of the 100 people, like we follow 100 people for 10 years. So each of the 100 people will have 10 observations instead of one observation. And among the 10 observations, we have some correlation because they are from the same person. Okay. So this is the longitudinal data set. So self-modeling will use the shape constraint regression framework, and it can be applied in longitudinal data sets in which we can assume that individual curves share the same shape, but they have different scale or intercept. Yeah, so here this data set is a data set about sheep. So here the response is the logarithm of some hormone concentration. And the predictor is again a time series hour. So the sheep will be grouped into 3 phases. So normal, obese, and obese again, and each sheep will be followed for 23 hours. So if some sheep is in the obese phase, it will be given some something called E2 and the bled at each time point. And their LH concentration will be recorded. So the goal of the project is to find the peak in the LH curve in normal phase and obese phase, and also normal again phase, right? And see if there is a significant delay in the peak. Yeah. And so here we need to detect 2 change points. So here we assume that the LH curve will look like this. So it's decreasing, increasing, and then decreasing. Yeah, so this is how we set up the model. I don't think I should explain the details. So here the FT component is what we put the shape constraint on. The decreasing, increasing, and then decreasing. So because of the correlation for observation from each sheep, the covariance structure will be more complicated, and there's a IID case, which is the data with tree height and tree diameter. Right? So in that data set, if we have 20 data points, they are independent because each data point comes from a different tree. But here, the data points are correlated in a more complicated way. Yeah. And here is the example. Yeah.
Do you use this type of thing for like SIR modeling, like for infectious disease, or like are there other applications?
Yes. So yeah. So as long as we have longitudinal data and we assume that the individual shares some curve with the same shape, it can be applied. But I'm not sure what kind of data set you are talking about.
Well, it just reminded me of like because you have basically like the sheep are normal and then they're obese and then they're normal again.
Yeah.
SIR is similar. It's like a person is like susceptible to being infected and then they're infected and then theoretically they hopefully get immunity and then they're normal again and then it repeats.
So what's the outcome of interest?
I mean, you can model, like, you could also try to predict, I guess, like, viral load, like when it's the highest, things like that. There's other stuff you can do with it, but.
So generally, SEI models, though, there's something like either cases. If you're going to model, I worked on measles data and measles epidemic, right? So you might have a location that has sort of a number of cases. So you could have many, many locations, and they may or may not be in sync. So you have to think about whether it makes sense to have, even in COVID, right, cases, whether you model one area or many areas, whether they are actually going to sort of follow this idea that they have the same shape. Maybe the actual epidemics of COVID follow the same kind of pattern, but maybe they're time shifted, or they do have sort of different change points or things take off at different times. So maybe I think that might be a better application, but maybe, using the estimate in that. So viral loads, I guess, is what people measure. If they do any of the sewage treatment, right? That's what they're measuring now to see what cases of COVID are nearby, right? So I think maybe you could use the viral load in a sewer system or whatever the treatment plants they're using to detect sort of what's going on. So that might be if you have many, the idea with growth curves is you have, this data on individuals over time, and they all share a common, what I would say, an overall behavior, overall function, and you're jiggling it. So anything that could be thought of in that way, I think you could use this.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you.
Is the application here sheep breeding?
Uh,
I mean, what is, who wants to know this information? Who wants to model this? Breed sheep?
yeah, so someone from,
They want to know when to try to breed or inseminate sheep. Is that
yeah, so,
the outcome with different individuals?
yeah, so some of the collaborators are from some biology department. Yeah, so they want to know if bleeding will affect the bluntness of the LH curve and the peak difference of the LH curve. But the sheep are doing well, I think. Don't need to worry about that.
Well, I don't worry about it. I wonder why they want, and they're trying to reproduce. This is like.
I guess we don't know enough about luteinizing hormone, right? Why?
Oh, yeah, that's
Measure.
the LH.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We can look that up. So.
Yeah, and I like this kind of framework because so in a lot like a statistical models we care about not losing too many degrees of freedom, right? So if we don't assume that they share the same curve and just use some random effect to reflect this, we may fit each individual with a different model. So in that case, we may have some overfitting problem. So here we are just using random scale and random intercept to show that, oh, they may have some difference, but overall they are having the same shape. So this is a very, very good thing. Yeah, and I didn't invent it, so it's come up with some other established statistical method. Yeah. Okay. And when we find the change point, we are just using something similar to the FIA project. So define an A matrix to find the two change points. And here, if we want some inference, so what I use now is to do bootstrapping to find the confidence interval for the P. Okay, so now let's look at the survey data example. So in this example, I'm going to talk about non-smooth fit. So which means the predictor will be discrete instead of continuous. So survey statisticians are usually interested in estimating population means. So here we suppose we have a finite population U and we divide them into a countable number of sets. So 1, 2, D. So this Y bar UD is what we want to estimate. And in a survey setting, usually we won't be able to get a large data set. So I think the example I covered today, so none of them are big data problem. But so this is still common nowadays, like the sheep data. So we follow each sheep for 23 hours. So it's not a large data set. And in survey setting, usually people, so it's expensive to collect a large data set. So the classical estimator is included in the survey package. So it's called Harjet estimate. So in survey data, we have different sampling strategies. So like so maybe we know simple random sampling, but that's not very efficient. So what people will use is something like a stratified sampling or cluster sampling. So for different sampling strategy, we will have different inclusion probability for some observations. And that will give us a weighted average, which is the estimate of the population. So one problem with this kind of estimator, why tilde, is that because of small number of data points in a survey setting, we may have some unwanted variance. Okay. Yeah. So that's why we can use order constraint estimator instead. So here again, we need a constraint matrix to force the monotonicity constraint. Okay. So here, for example, our goal is to estimate average cholesterol level given 5 age groups. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can assume that as people get older, they are more likely to have higher cholesterol level. Okay. Yeah, so this is how we define the A matrix. I think this is very similar to the salary example, right? So we have 5 average salaries, theta 1, theta 2, theta 5. So we only need 4 rows in the A matrix to do the comparison. Yeah. And sometimes we want partial order. So partial ordering means that we don't want to compare every pair in the data. We only want to compare, for example, the first group and the next 3 group. Right? So within the first group, we don't make any comparison. Within the last 3 group, we don't make any comparison. So this is how the constraint matrix works. Yeah. So if we have more than one predictor, so for example, so here we just assume that we have 2 genders. So we want to assume that average cholesterol level increase for female and male, but among the 2, within the 2 gender, we don't make any comparison. So here we will have a black diagonal A matrix, right? Okay. Okay, so we can extend the dimension of the A matrix when we have more and more predictors. So that's not hard to do. So in the C-survey package, which is the package giving order constraint, the main mean estimator, we will have estimation of the main means for complete ordering, like monotonic ordering or partial ordering. We also have confidence interval and the hypothesis. Okay. Yeah, so here is the National Health and the Nutrition exam survey data set. So in this data set, we have about 1,600 observations, and we have records for people's cholesterol level, age, height, and waist size. Right. Yeah. So all the predictor we care about. So we care about age, waist, and gender. So they are all categorical in this data set, or discrete in this data set. So this will give us like a 160 domains, which form a 3-dimensional grid. Okay. So here our goal is to estimate the probability of having high cholesterol level, and we assume the average cholesterol level increase in age and wisdom. Okay. So here we can see we have a total of 1,600 observations, and the number of domains is 160. So on average, each domain will have only about 10 observations. Right? So for each domain, the sample size is very small. So this will lead to a problem that is, so if sample size is small, then the variation is wide. So which is not what we want. Okay. So here we are comparing the constrained fit and the unconstrained fit for both genders. So on the right-hand side, we are having the unconstrained fit. So we are not having the increasing constraint. Right? So we can see that although we don't know the true average cholesterol level for both genders, they are very unlikely to change upwards and then downwards as people get older. Right? Change that in such a wide pattern. Right? Okay. So that's what's on the left is much more reasonable. So on average, so as people get older and the waist size increase, the cholesterol level will increase in a piecewise linear. Okay. Yeah. And I also did some simulations with this data set. So the true curve will be the green sigmoidal curve. So here we can see that the constraint fit will be closer to the truth, which is on the left. and the coverage, the confidence intervals will cover the truth. So on the right hand side, the unconstrained fit is changing very unreasonable. And the confidence band, although they can cover the truth, they are changing too much. So the variation is too much. Yeah, so if we increase the sample size, the unconstrained fit doesn't improve much. So here, if we compare the coverage rate, which is the upper half of each plot. So the blue one is for the constraint fit, and they are above 95%. So the black one is the unconstrained fit. So although the unconstrained fit coverage rate is still about 95%, the interval width is much larger. So this is the bad thing. Okay, so I think I'm about to end this talk. So I want to mention that I have so far developed 5 R packages, and they are all available on Current. So CompRoach is the foundation for all other packages, and it is for the projection problem we covered earlier today. So CGL is a constraint generalized additive model. So additive modeling is used when we want to have more than one predictor, and we want the effects to be additive instead of having interaction effects. Yeah. Well, here I want to talk briefly about some other machine learning projects I have done with my students. So I started working with graduate students when I was a postdoc in UCSB. So like what Dr. Bay just said, that department has a large actuarial program. And that program is sponsored by some industry partners like AAA, Farmers Insurance. So they will give us some data set they have and let us work on it. So this is a very good practice for the student because those data sets are not textbook data sets, so they are real data sets. Right? So they are very difficult to clean and process. And what I like about such kind of projects is that we don't know what kind of difficulties we will have. So for example, we have done a topic modeling and sentiment analysis project with some, I think it's AAA's insurance customer calls. So I don't know if you guys ever use text mining methods. No, oh, okay. So it's worked on text data, right? And this is now used a lot in industry. So for example, the customer service may receive maybe more than 1,000 customer calls, right? And I want to know what's the main topics within these calls. Okay. So without some like smart models, we may ask a group of people to read each customer call, right, and then summarize what they are about. So it may be very expensive. Okay, so with topic modeling, we can just figure it out within maybe 1 minute. Right? So this is a Bayesian, kind of a Bayesian model. Okay. Yeah. And I remember when we work on this data set, what we do is to first apply topic modeling to 10,000 customer calls and find the model will tell us the main topics, right, like a policy change or something. And then we ask some real actuary to read several hundred customer calls, and this is a way to verify if the model works or not. Okay. And another interesting thing that happened with this project is that we found, so topic modeling will try to detect important words, right? But sometimes important words will not happen as single words. They may happen as 2 words, right? So for example, if we have some reviews on Yelp about a restaurant. So if we try to define single words as important words, we may find something like good, right, as the most important word. So we may think, oh, people think this restaurant is good. But maybe the true case is that people are writing their review as this restaurant is not good. Right? So everybody is writing the review as this is not good, the food is not good, the service is not good. So actually we should combine not and good together and then define them as a single word. Okay. So this is what we discovered with this project. So this is a very interesting thing. Because this won't be introduced in some textbook, so it's you come to it practice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So actually, I plan to talk about this text mining project today, but I was just thinking there won't be enough time, so I skip it. So all these projects are published, and students are co-authors on this paper. Yeah, I think I better stop here for today and see if you guys have any questions. Oh, what's it? So do you guys have any?
Yeah, I have a question. This is a computational science seminar, and these are students, right? In your first application, you were doing regression.
Yes.
And suppose you had a really big data set.
Yes.
And the real question is, you know, obviously, maybe you can't do it with the program you have written now, but
Yes.
maybe I wonder if you could comment on the computational problems you would have as things, you know, because we have a lot of data nowadays. So maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, so when I write the component package, is the most important part is written C++. Actually, it's much faster than if I write all the code in R. And I think nowadays a lot of computers has maybe 8 cores or more than that. Right? So in R now the parallel package is already included in base R. Yeah, so it will allow users to do parallel computing with their own laptop instead of using a class. Yeah, so I think now the cram people or statisticians, they are just trying to improve their package to accommodate big data sets.
So what is the actual holdup of whatever you need to do, and is it the matrix operation?
Yes. So like in linear regression, we need to do some inverse, right? So that's very expensive. Yeah. So people, I think now they have something called open blank to be faster than the blank package.
Okay.
Which is for in your system.
The constraint regression work in higher dimensions too.
Yes. Yeah. So like I said, one package is secant, right? So the additive modeling. So for example, we can assume that average salary is increasing when people get older. Maybe not monotonic increasing, maybe it's increasing concave, right? So when you are in a company around 20 years, maybe your salary increasing rate will be pretty large. Maybe when you're about maybe 50, it's kind of flat. And it's also increasing in years you have worked. So you can keep any predictor. And then other questions.
I have one more.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is just, I always think about the spatial distribution of data also. So in your Landsat, you chose to do 16, right? Is there a way to actually put the spatial, like a neighborhood structure?
Yes.
Of the columns so that you could use information in nearby
Yeah.
things? And so how would that work in your analysis?
So it's not in this project, but actually we discussed about using neighbors.
Nearest neighbors,
Yeah,
that's what
and-
stuck out to me, because you had separate plots.
Yes.
And you know, at some point, usually people want in change point, either there's some kind of quality control so that you would monitor it, and then when things get out of a certain region, then you would alarm people there's something going on. So is this something that you can continuously update your model to adjust, because you would have to refit everything, or is there a sort of an updating scheme or a detection scheme because you had a yearly, looked like yearly data, and I'm imagining you could get this on pretty fine scales, right? And it would be coming into some center, and then you would have to, decide whether at the next, let's say it was hourly data, right? At the next hour, something was happening. And so is it possible to do that? Is your algorithm fast enough to keep up with this kind of process?
I think so far it may not be fast enough to follow an hour.
Okay, and so what would make it faster? If you could, if you were going to set up some kind of scheme to do that, what would you need?
Yeah, so actually I have read a paper recently. So instead of using the whole like X matrix to find the beta coefficient, maybe take a random sample first, get a beta 0, and you just update the QR matrix.
Okay. Yeah.
But I need to work on.
Okay, good.
It's challenging.
For the constraint, like, this modeling, does that type of, process rely on assumptions you make about what the, look like ahead of time? Like, for example, like, you assume that salary goes up with age. Do you always have to have an assumption like that to use the constraint?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier. It's a good question. So we may let's see. So sometimes we may be worried what if the shape assumption is not the optimal one. So in that case we can do a shape selection. Right? So for example, maybe I can assume as like age increase, salary will increase like this, the average salary will increase like this. Or we may assume, we may want to assume that it's first increasing and then go like this, right?
We hope it doesn't go there.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we are not sure which shape is the best, we can do a shape selection and compare their stats. Right? So if there are main predictors, we can do some genetic algorithm to choose which combination. So if we have x1, x2, x10, then we want to know which shape is optimal for each of them. So we can, so for example, so for example, each predictor has a total of 9 shapes. Right? So I have x1 up to x10. Right? So it's not a good idea to go through each possible combination. So here we will have 9 to 10 possible combinations. So it's not smart to go through all of them. It's very expensive. So we can do some genetic algorithm to do much less computations and find the best combination. Yeah, good.
Okay, so let's thank our speaker.